Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Blue Corner and to a Cardfight deck profile. And as the pictures may have alluded to, this is indeed an updated Nectar deck profile post Try 3 next in set 10, although to be perfectly honest, there's nothing from set 10 in here because in my opinion that set really did nothing for the deck. It's not like the cards in there are terrible, it's just that there are better things. Like if Selfina came out last year, I'd actually be running it, but because Selfina came out now, she has to compete with another card that I'm running instead that's just overall better. So, with that being said, let's dive into this. So, not a whole lot in the deck has changed despite the fact that I've got some new cards in here. The overall purpose of the deck is still as it was before. In my opinion, the best way to play this deck is going to be Ahsha with Marjuka and Ronnie, because while you could play 7 Ahshas or Ahsha and Ines, in my opinion, those aren't as good as this, because while those two decks are able to build big power columns, this deck can build big power columns that draw you cards when they hit, which your opponent doesn't really want to let happen, because if you do hit, you're going to end with 10 or more cards in hand, generally speaking, and that's pretty daunting for some decks to get through. So as a result, even if they're at 1 or 2 damage, they're probably going to throw their entire hand down in order to guard you, and in doing so, they're left with very little in their hand for your following turn, which you attempt the combo again, or you just push their shit in with Primavera, Inverno, or even Dream Spinning Ahsha. So in my opinion, the pros of this build I feel far outweigh that of any other build involving Ahsha. So with that being said, let's get started. So starting Vanguard, 2 copies of Elmi. In my opinion, she's the better starter if you choose to go the route of not playing the loop. I know it exists, I just choose not to do it, partially because I don't have trial decks up here, but mostly because it's kind of just BM for me to do that around here, because all we have is just locals right now. If I were to go to a major tournament, then I might consider dropping one of these and running a 9th grade 3 instead, and running the new starter, but I like Elmi for her ability to extend my combos, and she's also got her uses in the control matchups like Link Joker and Kagero, where you can have her clone your Marjukas and then bounce the units you clone back to the hand. So in that case, you just clone her off of Ahsha and then go from there. Then for the grade 3s, 4 copies of the new Ahsha Searing Heart Rhinoculus. And her skills are Generation Break 2, Bloom. When another copy of herself comes into play, you can counter charge 1 and soul charge 1. During the phase of either player's turn, you can choose a card from your hand to call it to rearguard, and then counter plus 1 Soul Blast 1 on stride, choose one of your units, clone it, and the clone unit gets the boost ability in a turn. So, it's just a strictly better version of the original Ahsha. And then for the backup 3s, as I've already alluded to, 4 Marjukas. So when another copy of Marjuka is put into play, her Bloom skill activates, which allows you to buff any unit by 3k, but if the chosen unit is a Ronnie, that unit also gets the ability to draw and soul charge on hit, which is the basis of this entire deck. You get a rather powerful draw engine provided it hits, but it will hit at least 1 time per game as long as things more or less go your way. And their other skill is a Vanguard skill of when your Bloom unit is targeted for an effect, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw 1, but you don't want to be riding this thing. Never. And then for the grade 2s, we have here 4 copies of Ronnie, who is treated as a Marjuka while on the field and in a deck. And her skills are Bloom. When another copy of herself or Ronnie or Marjuka is put into play, you get to choose up to 5 copies of Marjuka or Ronnie on the field, and they each gain 1,000 power for your currently in play Bloom units. So, say for instance, you have a setup of this, this, and this, and you have one of these, and you call another one of these. This will Bloom, and you'll get 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. So, she also lets you get big numbers. And yeah, her ability to count as Marjuka while in the deck and field, though, is probably what ultimately breaks this card. And then for the remaining grade 2s, we have your 4 copies of Thuria. Just a quick refresher, when she's put into play and you have a Rhinoculus Vanguard, you choose one of your units and she's treated that on play, so she allows you to Bloom. And other skill is at the beginning of your main phase, you can choose a unit in the drop zone with the name that she has, so either herself or whatever she's copying. You return it to the bottom of the deck in order to bounce it to your hand, thus allowing you to reuse her, and that's why she's stupid. And then the final grade 2 is the new card, Tenacious Maiden Noelle, who has 2 skills. First up, Generation Break 2, discard a card to have her gain the ability to attack from the back row. And then other skill is Bloom. When another copy of herself is put into play, And I believe, yeah, no other restrictions. You get to choose herself and another unit in the same column as her, and they get 4,000 power. This is not a generation break ability, so this actually does allow you to do a little bit of rushing. You can have any Vanguard in play, call this 4/4, and there you go. You have a beefy, somewhat beefy column, but the general game plan with this deck is to draw into this off of your Majuka Ronnie combo, so that you can have Verano clone 3 of these out on the following turn, or even just 2 of them out on the following turn, and just attack. And then afterwards, you'll want to use Glorious Bloom to buff these things up by 15,000 power, and then they become super big, and then you hit stand triggers, and your opponent's dead. But because her effect is a discard, she's very expensive, and you don't want to be using her effect too much, which is why I feel she works best in this build, because Majuka and Ronnie will get you the cards necessary to use her skill and not go super neg an advantage. Then for the grade 1s, 4 of the new Perfect Guard, Flower Keeper Dragon. So when this guy is placed on Guardian Circle from the hand and you have a Ranunculus Vanguard, or rather I think it's if you're Perfect Guarding a Ranunculus Vanguard. Let's see. Yeah, if you are Perfect Guarding a Ranunculus Vanguard, you get the ability to look at the top 5 cards of your deck for any unit you currently have in play and add it to your hand. So say you have a board of this, whoops. Dropping my cards. Yeah, so you have this as your field setup, and you Perfect Guard your Ahsha. You look at the top 5 cards in your deck, and if there's a Ronnie or a Majuka among them, you can add either one of them to your hand. So it's a really nice skill for a Perfect Guard, and I'm kind of surprised this kind of a thing was done, especially for Neo Nectar, because it really benefits this deck, being able to just search out combo pieces. And then 4 Stride Fodders, and 4 of the new grade 1 Faith Maiden Odette. So Odette has a Bloom ability, which is not Generation Break restricted. Instead, you just have to have a grade 3 Vanguard. So when another copy of yourself is put into play and you have a grade 3 Vanguard, you choose up to 2 of your units and they gain 4,000 power until end of turn. Another skill is Generation Break 1. At the beginning of your main phase, you can choose any normal unit from your drop zone and put it to the bottom of your deck to bounce it to the hand. So she is one of your backup plays for when you don't have your main combo for the deck. So instead, you can just clone her and just get some attacks off. She obviously has synergy with Primavera, because much like Katarina, she just gives out 4k buffs whenever more copies of her are put into play. So this card, in theory, allows you to do some silly things. And if you need to do a combo with Dream Spinning Ranunculus or Inverno or Glorious Bloom, you can just have her bounce out of dodge, which is actually a pretty nice ability. And then for the triggers, we're running 4 of the good stand triggers, 4 of the busted stand trigger. I'm shocked this is still at 4 here. And I think this is what allows us to... This is also one of the key pieces to winning the control matchups, as by being able to cycle normal units back in the deck, you're able to more or less outlast certain decks, especially if they're inexperienced in dealing with Neo Nectar and they get way too greedy with Chaos Breaker Dragon or... what's his name, Ultra Ego Messiah's Soul Blast to draw. You could very well deck them out with this card. And she's also what allows you to win against Kagero too, as she can just recycle the things that they keep blowing up, and then they eventually run out of strides and you just push them in. Narcom is a different issue because they bind stuff. 4 crits, as generally speaking, your opponent's going to put so much into guarding your rear guards, they're going to no-guard your Vanguard, and then you flip a crit and they die. Furthermore, you have the opportunity to call this out and clone it, which allows you to then boost with it, attack, draw cards, build up soul, which is very important because Ahsha does in fact build soul. I mean, you could run Monkey Paw Dragon, which is from the trial deck, it's a Margot clone, but I like the ability to just catch my opponent with a critical unawares. And then finally 4 heal triggers, because G-Guards in this deck are very good. Then for the strides, still rocking the 4 copies of Verano. I feel this is just generally better than Selfina, as Verano A doesn't cost counterblasts. Instead, she costs soul, which once you perform your combo, you will have excess of, and Elmi can also do it. She returns units to the deck so you can clone them. She's one of the few cards in this deck that can return triggers to the deck. And the unit she calls gets the boost ability, which comboed with Ahsha allows you to just call for some really big columns. And generally speaking, once again, you'll be flipping up Verano the first time around, and then afterwards you'll be flipping up these Dream Spinning Ahshas that I'm running, 3 of them, so that I can make my Glorious Bloom even sillier. Dream Spinning is also a potential first stride if you have literally nothing else going for you. You can just have her buff your front row by 5k. But generally speaking, you don't really use Dream Spinning that often. It's just it's a fail safe. But generally speaking, you just run the 3 so that you have at minimum 2 flipped up by the time you go into Glorious Bloom, and then Glorious Bloom can just buff your Noels by 15k, because that's generally speaking what you want to be doing. You want to have Glorious Bloom, call out Noel, and make your Noels 15, 15, 15, 15, and all of a sudden you're got these big beefy attackers that are swinging from the back row, and then you flip stand triggers again and your opponent's dead. Then 2 copies of the new generation rare Flower Princess of Beautiful Winter Inverno. So Inverno has 2 skills. The first one is Soul Blast 1, and choose up to 5 normal units from your field or drop zone, return them to the deck, and if 5 normal units were put to the deck this way, you get to countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. So she's more or less a pot of avarice for Vanguard, except you don't draw 2 cards. But you can still do some silly things there. But she's used to reload the deck in case you've already exhausted some of your cards. Like if you've done the Majuka Running combo, but you weren't able to get there fully, you can just put them all back in and just do it again. And you can do a somewhat weaker version of the Verano turn with this, as you can just call out, you can throw back all but 1 of your combo pieces, and then use your second skill, which is Generation Break 2, discard a card, counterblast 1. When a unit is put into play, you choose one of your bloom units you have on the field, and search up to 2 copies from your deck to your hand. So one of the combos that I've seen is you cycle back everything but your 1 Merjuka, and then you call, say, what's a good example here? Say you're going for a full-on deck reload. You call this card. You can counterblast 1, discard 1, and you can search up to 2 Merjukas, or 2 Ron, or a Merjuka and a Ron, because again, they're treated as the same thing. And then you can call your Ronnie down here. You can call your Merjuka here. This will bloom and give a 3k buff here. And you can call your Ronnie here. These 2 Merjukas will bloom. You give the 2 buffs to Ronnie, and then you can also counterblast 1, discard 1 to search out 2 more copies of this. Call this down. These bloom. Throw them back into the deck, and then you draw a card, and you call counterblast 1, discard, search out 2 more Ronnies or a Majuka and a Ronnie, and you go from there. So the card's silly, and there's obviously the loop I talked about before. The loop involves using this card in tandem with the new starter, Noel, and I believe it's actually this card, since this can cycle itself back in. But yeah, she's a very good card, and being able to, because I'm running 2 copies, I can actually reload 10 cards into my deck over the course of the game, and in tandem with this, I should almost never deck out, and I should be able to outlast control decks, in theory, but I haven't been able to put that into practice yet. Mostly because nobody really likes playing against this deck anymore. And then lastly, 1 Primavera. Although I'm not as able to countercharge as much as before because I'm not running the unflipped PGs, the ability to get that win out of nowhere with this card still exists. And honestly, if your local meta doesn't have as much Link Joker or Kagero, you can honestly drop one of these things and run another one of these instead, so you can try and do it a second time. Because even though she's not as capable of hitting big numbers as Katarina, Odette still has the same ability as Katarina in a Neo Nectar deck. So Odette and Thuria with Primavera can still put off some pretty big numbers. And lastly, 1 copy of Sabreeze, because being great stalled against this deck is not a good idea unless you're doing the riding grade 2s over and over again. That sucks. But this deck can still benefit greatly off of Sabreeze, as it's really just only Ahsha that counterblasts. So you have the 3 counterblasts and a soul, and you can do some silly things on your Sabreeze. Then for the G-Guards, 1 Ogling. It's a combo deck, and sometimes you'll have excess copies of units, or you need to get something into the drop zone for Verano put back into the deck. 1 new G-Guardian. This is Passiflora, Flower Maiden, Marlena. So her skill is, when she's placed on Guardian Circle, you choose one of your units. If you have 2 units with Rhinoculus in play, or 4 of that same unit, she gets a 15k shield buff. So she's a 30 shield that is more or less easier to pull off than the last G-Guardian I was running her place, Verno. Verno can get bigger numbers, but she requires you to have a full board, whereas this requires you to have, to get the most out of it, you just really need to have 2 Ahshas in play. So Ahsha or Thuria copying Ahsha, which is a lot easier to do because of Ahsha's end phase skill. So I just feel this is the better Big Shield G-Guard. And lastly, 2 copies of Rain Breath Dragon, as much like before, he has the ability to call units onto the field during your opponent's turn, which in tandem with this card and this card allow you to give your Vanguard passive buffs against multi-attack decks. which I still feel is a very useful ability. Although his ability to field units isn't as powerful as it used to be because of Ahsha's MP scale, but you can still do some cheap, cute things by using this to field something and then using this to call this thing into play, and then you just clone one thing, and then, or you have Verano clone both things, and then you can just take them from there. Like, the deck is very flexible in how it wants to do, and it's actually quite technical to play. Like, I don't think it's as technical to play as Grand Blue Nitros, but it's right up there. Like, Ahsha is by no means an easy deck to pilot. You really need to be knowing your shit in order to get the most value out of it. But that's what makes playing this kind of deck rewarding, because once this thing starts playing and it goes off, it is a thing of beauty and annoyance to opponents too. Like, some people just actively hate playing against Neo Nectar. Like, those remarks at the beginning of the video, those were like actual quotes. People would much rather play against my Gear Chronicle deck or my Nitros deck, you know, Gear Cancer and Pirate Cancer, than play against this, because they hate Neo Nectar that much. And all I can think about is that all that salt only makes my flowers grow that much stronger. But anyway, that's it for this deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sorry for the wait, but it took quite a while to get certain cards for this deck. Looking particularly at you and you, because the secondary market's dumb. Thankfully though, the next deck profile I plan on doing, which is Grand Blue Nitros, isn't nearly as problematic, because for the most part, the Grand Blue cards in the new set are cheap. It's just really only Dragon that's over $20 Canadian, and that's saying something. Wasn't expecting Starlight Nitros to be as cheap as she was, so I snagged those things up, and yeah. As a result, that will be the next deck profile, and after that, it's just more or less waiting for Fighters Collection and Set 11 to come out, as I do have a Kagero deck, and I really do like the look of the new Blaze cards, so I'm looking forward to building an updated Blade Master deck. And with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, this is Blue Star 899. Jack me out.